Anxiety is the most common mental health concern in North America. And in the US, 31% of Americans suffer from the condition. And while there are just as many external explanations as there are prospective remedies, one thing is overlooked for both cause and cure: food. My next guest has a master's of science in public health and is a registered holistic nutritionist. Her practice acknowledges the wholeness of a person and the complicated journey of being a modern human. Today, she's going to open up about her own complicated relationship with food as someone recovering from an eating disorder and talk food strategy as mood strategy as we ask the question, could your anxiety be due to your dinner? Advocate for peace, recovering perfectionist, using food for mood, Heather Lillico. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me. That was such a beautiful introduction.
Well, you do make it easy. This is such an interesting topic and one that we definitely need more health professionals being willing to explore. And so I love how you take kind of a partnered approach and you are full spectrum, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, definitely very holistic. It's come a lot from my own journey and struggles with food and sort of changing to see food as medicine, food as healing, as opposed to food as enemy.
Yes, exactly. And I think most of us are familiar with the idea of comfort food. No one is disputing comfort food works, but the idea that our food could be making us anxious, maybe that is a little bit more, of a challenge to wrap our heads around. So what research data have you found that suggests that this could be serious enough that quitting certain foods could actually be like a psychiatric intervention?
Yeah, there's a lot of really compelling research in the area of nutrition around the link between our diet and our mood. And I would say I experienced it firsthand. Like that's first how I got into this work was I developed anxiety in university and I started having panic attacks. And it got to the point where I was so overwhelmed. I was so on edge. And I was like, I can't live the rest of my life like this. And so I was in the working world at the time and I quit the job that I had. And I was like, I got to go on a journey and figure out like what is going to work, what's going to help. And I was becoming a nutritionist sort of on the side. And I was started off more like general kind of counseling. And then I started to get really interested in the link between food and anxiety. And so I started to play around with my diet and I saw that there were these trends that, oh, when I removed or reduced these certain foods, I started to feel a lot better. And so I started diving into the research to see like what physiologically is going on in the body that is causing this link to happen. And so I started to see that there are certain foods that relate to anxiety, and there are also certain nutrients that people, when they're deficient in, can display symptoms of anxiety. So if you're not getting what you need, your body doesn't have the building blocks to help you feel calm.
Ooh, and then it's just an uphill battle. Okay, talk to me about the nutrients first. What nutrients were kind of top of the list?
Yeah. So, in terms of the nutrients that we want to make sure we're getting enough of that are really going to help with mood, magnesium is one of the most important minerals. It's involved in over 300 reactions in the body. It has a really big role in helping to produce GABA, which is our relaxing neurotransmitter in our brain. I'm sure people have heard of serotonin, dopamine. GABA is, I don't think we talk about it enough, but it's a big one related to anxiety. We need to have enough of it to feel calm. And so magnesium helps that creation of GABA. So that's one for folks to consider. B12 as well, or vitamin B12. Our B vitamins are like our energy vitamins. And when we don't get enough of them, our mood suffers as a result of that. And when we are stressed, we burn through them. We need a whole lot more of them. And so B12 is sort of related to some of those pathways of creating some of our neurotransmitters as well. So we want to consider that. Zinc as well, another mineral, has big links to anxiety. Omega 3s, which are involved in inflammation. We want to make sure we're getting enough of those because a side effect of inflammation can be feeling anxious, can be feeling depressed as well. But we want our brain to be happy and full of, have enough antioxidants that helps protect it from inflammation. But just by nature of like how we live our lives, we're exposed to so much inflammation, right? Pollution and plastics and different things that can lead to disrupting our hormones and causing inflammation. So we want to make sure that we're getting things like omega 3s that are going to help us feel calm and relaxed.
I recently did some blood work and found out on accident that my body is not absorbing magnesium the way that it should be. Like taking 900 to 1,000 milligrams every day, and my blood work still reflecting someone who doesn't take magnesium whatsoever. For people who are wanting to kind of start at that level, really precision nutrition medicine, if you will, are there certain labs that they should request from their doctor in order to make those food choices differently?
Definitely. I think we have to be really strong advocates when it comes for our health, and the doctor's office is a great place to start. So, someone could consider ordering some blood work that includes testing for your B12 levels, your iron levels as well. Iron can link to anxiety. Vitamin D is a really big one. Now, we're coming into right now as we're recording this like the summer months, and so it's a little bit warmer and nicer out, but a deficiency in vitamin D is linked to anxiety. Also, magnesium you can test with blood work. I would probably also consider doing like a thyroid hormone test because a side effect of your thyroid being out of balance is that your mood is out of balance as well. Someone could also look at their levels of inflammation, like you can measure your C-reactive protein via some blood work, or even doing like a dried urine test can measure some of your hormone levels. I know a couple of years ago when I was feeling really just burnt out and exhausted, I did one and it just gave me so much clarity of like what was going on in terms of like why was I waking up at 2, 3 in the morning? Oh, because my cortisol was off. And so it will just give you a little bit of a starting point of okay, what might I need to consider supplementing? And maybe just sometimes it's like, oh, it makes sense as to why I've been feeling this way. Like when I see that my iron is low in blood work, I can then link it to, you know what? I have been feeling so exhausted and tired. And it gives me like a little bit of peace of mind of like, it's making sense now. It's from this. Now I have a bit of a path forward.
Isn't it funny that we need help listening to our bodies, though? We need those
Yeah.
outside data points to learn how to like calibrate our internal senses to go, okay, this thing happened to me. Like was struggling once with some jaw pain, and it took me a while to realize I was tightening my jaw when I was around certain people. So, just in case I'm not the only one who struggles with that, body mind non-communication, how do you advise your clients to help kickstart that mind body connection so that they can figure out when I eat X, I feel Y?
Yeah, I think it's important to know your own body and know what agrees with you and what doesn't. And some of the symptoms or signs people could start to look out for are after a meal, like how do you feel? Do you feel bloated? Do you feel sluggish and tired? Do you feel that kind of brain fog where you just feel like you're not firing on all cylinders, like you can't think clearly? Is there fatigue there? Is there irritability? We really want to bring a sense of curiosity. That's like the biggest tool we have is curiosity about how do I feel when I eat certain things? And perhaps maybe another question to ask is how do I feel when I don't eat something? And what I mean is I had this client I was working with and we were working on some digestive issues along with anxiety. And I had recommended, why don't we try pulling out dairy and let's see what happens. And she was really resistant to it and said, like, I don't really think I have a problem with dairy. I eat it all the time. Like I don't have bloating, anything. And I said, well, let's just get curious and let's just see. And so we pulled out dairy for a couple weeks and she came back and she said, Heather, I didn't realize I was just bloated all the time. Like she just wasn't tuning in necessarily because it was like this low level kind of response. And unless she had gotten curious, she wouldn't have found that out. So this is why I think we want to bring curiosity over judgment when it comes to food, but also just start to really tune into some of these symptoms and see what's present and what's absent when we have certain foods.
With someone that is having gut issues, maybe part of their gut issues is the inability or the slow ability to absorb nutrients. Maybe they have some microbiome issues that they're really struggling with. Do they need to prep differently in order to make these changes? Because like the magnesium, like I'm not absorbing it. It don't matter how many supplements I take, and I'm working with a functional doctor to remedy that. But like, is there a different strategy for someone that has always had tummy issues?
We want to consider for most times, it's really not the food's fault. Now, we are going to go over some foods later that perhaps I do think that no matter, how strong your gut is, it's like these foods are going to cause this reaction. It's just physiologically what they do. But in general, like real whole foods, if they're causing a reaction, it's not like the food's fault per se. It's can be that the body is in a state of imbalance, right? So that gut bacteria, for example, we don't have enough good gut bacteria, or the bad guys have kind of taken over. That's going to lead to the imbalance. So that's really the root that needs to be addressed, is let's bring the gut back into balance, both with perhaps like some probiotics, some gut bacteria we're going to add in. We're probably going to do some gut restoration work with perhaps some ingredients like marshmallow root or slippery elm or aloe, or some glutamine is a great one. Some things that are going to help keep those cells in the gut nice and plump and healthy, so that the food doesn't seep out when we have leaky gut, and it can cause a reaction and can cause inflammation, leading to things like anxiety. So we can kind of address the root, which is, yeah, let's make sure that gut function is as it should be, and let's restore the balance of bacteria. And I'm even going to add a piece that most people miss, which is, how are you eating? I call it the unsexy side of food. But it's, if you are eating on the go, and if you're scarfing down your food over the sink, or if you're eating while watching TV, your body is not in a state of rest and digest, which needs to happen for digestion. And so we live in this culture of like busyness and, always packed full and so many things going on, that it can be really hard to take time for our meals. But that's often where I start with clients, is like, step number one, let's practice good digestion principles of, taking a few breaths before you sit down. Just actually today, I was leading a mindful eating session for a company, and I took them through the process of like sitting down, having a snack, taking a few deep breaths, using your senses, really enjoying the food, chewing thoroughly is such an underrated step for digestion. Like, you should honestly feel like a horse when you're eating, in that you're just like chew, chew. That really prepares the body to be able to digest it well.
Yeah, people don't think about that. That's really interesting. That would be a great first step for the people that are struggling with that mind-body disconnect, as like as a practice. I want to go back to what you said about it's not quite the food's fault. Would that imply that food-induced anxiety is essentially a type of allergy?
So I would say allergy. I would say that there's a big connection between how the gut functions and your mood. And it goes both ways, which is interesting. It's kind of like a chicken or the egg thing, in that an imbalance in gut bacteria, because your gut bacteria make a lot of your mood boosting neurotransmitters. And so an imbalance in gut bacteria means you're not getting those mood boosting neurotransmitters produced, right? You're going to feel anxious. But what we also know is that when anxiety is present, it further disrupts the gut. So there's like all these bidirectional signals going on. One of the main pathways we have to communicate with the gut is through the vagus nerve, which is like our main relaxing nerve. So much interesting research coming out about that. But this is why practices like slowing down for digestion will get that vagus nerve involved to help really relax and like be able to digest your food fully. So there is a relationship, but I don't think we can say with finality that like these, foods will cause this, but we can say that they are certainly related.
Well, there's like two chicken egg scenarios, because the gut is said to be the first brain, right? And most people who have depression, anxiety also have some sort of gut issue. But then also the other chicken egg question is, don't we eat a certain way when we feel anxious, right? Like the anxiety makes us seek out those foods that make us feel calm, whether it's because of a childhood memory or their ingredients in the actual food. So I feel like it's muddy waters.
Yeah, it absolutely, right? And anxiety can also, it can lead us to eat more and perhaps crave more things, usually like carb forward things, because it's like, oh, I just want some comfort, some energy. But anxiety can also deplete appetite, right? Like, have you ever been so anxious to maybe have like a big meeting or like a public speaking kind of event, and your appetite just like completely shuts down, or you feel nauseous?
Girl,
like, we
no,
know there's a
that
link.
don't happen over here, okay? These people that are like, I forgot to eat, or I'm so anxious I haven't eaten. No, absolutely
Fair enough.
never have I ever. Let the record reflect.
Fair enough. Fair enough. For some folks, that might be the case. I'm more in the camp that like I would turn to food for comfort. But recently I was on national television and it was live. And like right before that, like trying to eat breakfast in the morning was such a struggle, because I was like, oh my, I'm going to puke like live on air. Like, this is what's going to happen. So anxiety definitely can affect our gut our whole body. I'm sure people feel like the physical sensations of anxiety, right? Like it's not just something that's like in your head overthinking. It's you have this kind of like physical response to it that's really challenging.
Well, I think it would make it extra challenging to assess things because that's where I find that I have had the most improvement in. And when I talk with others about things that are maybe in this general area of discussion, that's where they have the hardest time is because culturally we are taught to outsource our wellness 100%. Don't even come with a hypothesis to the doctor's office unless it's a pharmaceutical commercial that you saw and they told you to ask your doctor about it, right? So it's like, so some of it is a little bit of that social conditioning, but because that part is so difficult, that is kind of like the bulk of my questions that I want to ask you. Because further muddying the waters is also this shift that we've had where mental health conversation has made it into the mainstream. Thank goodness, it's done so much good.
Mhm.
But when casual mentions of anxiety are the norm and you even have like in-group benefits by having anxiety, meaning like
Mm.
maybe you're sharing with a group on a social media platform and all these people have anxiety. If you're suddenly like, I ate broccoli and now I feel better, you're out of the group, buddy. So how do you navigate that self-assessment in an honest way when we have all of these confusing factors at work?
I think a lot of it comes down to your beliefs about yourself and your beliefs in terms of like your self-trust. And what I mean is if I have a belief that I trust myself, I know what's best for my body because I'm so tuned into its signals, then I'm going to eat in a way that feels intuitive, that feels what I'm naturally drawn to. And when you trust yourself deeply and have such a, I want to say reverence is the word that's coming to mind. And when you have such a reverence for your body, I mean, this is like your vessel that is carrying you through the world, then I do think it shifts your food habits. Like what I've seen for myself is when I had such low self-worth, I was reaching for foods that were more processed and packaged because I wasn't really tuned into my body. And I also, on some level, like on a subconscious level, I don't think that I believed I was worthy of nourishment, of support, of fuel. And so now that I've really shifted that belief, and this is why food is such a complicated subject, that it's not just food, it really does reflect like your deeper beliefs about yourself. Since I know now, like I'm worthy, I'm good enough, I'm deserving, I trust myself to nourish my body in a way that does feel really good. And so I find myself more often reaching for real whole foods with nutrients that are going to help me feel good because when you shift the underlying beliefs, you want to act in alignment with those beliefs, right? Someone who trusts themselves, who believes that they're worthy, that they're good enough, they want to nourish their body because that's what the body truly does. I think like at a baseline level, like these are the things that our body knows are good for it and will crave.
That's interesting. Yeah. Evidence that information is not enough.
Like we all know kale is healthy. Like get out of here. You can't tell me at this point that you don't understand fruits and veggies are healthy. Like that's not a lack of knowledge thing. Although I think it is kind of interesting to learn about certain foods and what power or, extra nutrients they have that might be beneficial, but everyone has the baseline knowledge of nutrition. At this point, it's really not about that. I do think it is about addressing the underlying belief so that people know that they are worthy and deserving of nourishing themselves in this way, that they can take time for their meals, that, they can have that like sort of ritual out of it, that we don't have to just blow through life and go, go, go. We can take time to rest and eat and digest.
So the idea that this data information was not enough, that your own lived experience matters and that you matter, was that something that you realized through your journey of food relationship struggles with bulimia, or was that way after? Tell me about what that felt like for you.
I've always struggled with food. And when it really came to a head in university, I experienced a sexual assault trauma, and that sort of led to coping with food and led to the bulimia. And I had such a tangled relationship. And all I remember is that I wanted to eat as little as possible because I wanted to be as small as possible. And I really wanted to, it was part of like wanting to disappear from life. And I would go through these periods, though, of feeling like out of control or feeling really intense emotions and not having the coping skills to be able to handle those emotions, like anxiety being one of them. And so I would eat to numb out. And then I would feel so much shame because I thought, oh my gosh, like, how do you have no self control? You can't even control what you eat. And so then I would purge afterwards. And then I would feel shame about that. And it was just a cycle and a cycle. And that was like over a decade that I struggled with that. And I struggled in secret with it. So really no one knew, like not my closest friends, not my family, no one knew because I had so much shame around it. And honestly, I think that's the reason why I became a nutritionist is because I thought, okay, if I can just know everything about food, then I'm going to be able to control it so much better. And then I'm going to be this certain size and I'm going to feel happy and confident in all these things. And what I found was that having the knowledge about nutrition, it didn't help in terms of being able to cope with the emotions. Like that was the underlying real root of the bulimia. So that I had to address through years of therapy, through yoga, through meditation, and through these practices of like really sitting with food and having sometimes like exposure therapy to foods that felt, scary, I would say to me, or I had heard, this food is bad for you and thinking like, oh, I can't ever have it in the house because I'm going to binge on it. Flash forward to in my freezer, there's like ice cream sitting there and it's totally fine. It's okay. It can be there and I don't have to worry that I'm going to like eat it all at once and then feel really guilty about it. But this takes a while, I think, to kind of, retrain our relationship with food.
Do you think making food a moral issue is part of the general struggle?
Yeah, I've seen this a lot in clients where there's so much language of like, oh, I was bad today. I had
Right.
this. I was good today. And I'm like really on a mission to change that because you're not a better person because you eat a salad. Like you can eat a salad and still be an asshole. Like it's not about that. So it has nothing to do with our goodness as a human, but we certainly have tied it to our worth and our, there's so much shame and judgment when I think if we just sort of brought curiosity to it, because I like to say like everything in moderation. Like if you want to have the cookie, that's totally fine. But I also want to balance it with this perspective of like, is it self-loving? Is it self-care if I'm going to eat this thing? Right. And the answer might be, yeah, for a little bit of it, totally. But perhaps when we cross that barrier of like, overeating, then it becomes that point of like, this is no longer self-loving and self-care to myself when I'm having, this amount of it or it having it too frequently, just as an example.
Yeah. So, who are the top offenders on the food list that, regardless of your biological tendencies, they just tend to be anxiety inducing just because that's their nature?
These are what I call the 5 stress escalators. And again, let's bring a lens of curiosity here to see like, how might these be affecting me? And so number 1 is coffee because it is a nervous system activator. And when you are already in a state of anxiety, you are already pushing that fight or flight pathway. Your nervous system, your sympathetic nervous system is already kicked on. And so coffee is activating it even more. And especially if we're having it like, first thing in the morning on an empty stomach, it's very acidic and it is going to affect your stress hormones. So maybe we do like an herbal tea instead, or even just like a half calf, perhaps, right? Like lessening the amount of caffeine that you're having, or doing like an adaptogenic blend.
Okay, you had me at adaptogenic blend because I was like, Heather, oh, listen, I cannot get rid of my coffee. But I think that's, again, I'm sure the listener can relate to me. Like, this is what happens. I mean, you're in this world every day. Like, we hear this advice and we immediately get defensive, like, don't take away my fill in the blank, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, we're not even in the same country right now. Like, you can't take away anything that I have. But I think that's like the nature of us learning that people in white coats tell us what to do, and then we are just, doing what they say or feeling bad that we don't do what they say. And if I'm hearing you correctly, what I'm hearing is that you're saying there's a third option actually, and it's where you connect your mind and your body with compassion and have agency over your own choices to ask, is this morning coffee really doing me any good?
Yeah, that's so well said. Absolutely, right? Everyone has agency over their life. I mean, I'm here to share what the evidence says, what I found effective, what I've seen as a nutritionist in this space for almost a decade now. But each person gets to make their own choice. And this is why we come from curiosity and exploration, right? How might this be affecting me? Do I need coffee in the morning because I'm so exhausted because I'm not sleeping well? Then great, let's address sleep, right? Let's like back up and get that first domino to fall. If it's like the ritual you love, awesome. We can do plenty of things to get you that ritual and have you feeling that like, warm moment to yourself holding your cup. That's fine. But people, yeah, we do get so attached to it's almost like an identity shift that has to happen to see like, can we let go of this piece that we've held on to because we see that it's no longer loving to ourselves to consume it if it's something that, does truly affect your body. And you'll know when you start to tune in and notice the signals from the body.
100%. So who
Yeah.
else is on this list?
So coffee was one, dairy is another one. And the reason I say dairy is because it is one of the top food sensitivities, meaning it shows up very often for people in terms of a food that's causing an issue. We know that most people lose the enzyme to process dairy as we age. And if we think of like the purpose of dairy, right, it's to fatten up baby cows. And so this is why it's a hormonal product. We would be getting all of those signals like fatten us up. And as adults, we don't need that. So a lot of people get concerned about calcium. I mean, there's loads of other sources to get calcium from. If it is a food sensitivity or your body can't process it, then it is going to cause inflammation, cause a reaction in the body, and feeling anxious can be a side effect of that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. As someone who stopped being able to process dairy at 34, I don't know about
Okay, saw the
anxiety,
shift.
but yeah, anxiety that I might like fart and it would embarrass me. But
For sure.
but systemic dysregulation for me, maybe not, but definitely on those side effects for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I teach yoga. I hear all the farts all the time. It's a big, we move past it. Yeah.
Yeah,
But yes,
exactly.
it definitely can lead to some anxiety if it's affecting the stomach. Yeah.
Yeah. Who else is on that list?
So the next one would be alcohol. And the reason alcohol can affect us is it depletes those B vitamins. So we talked about at the beginning, your B vitamins are like your energy vitamins, right? They have a big role in mood. And alcohol has been shown to deplete them. It also depletes GABA, which is that relaxing neurotransmitter.
Oh,
Hmm.
that's interesting because
Yeah.
we drink alcohol to relax. Notice how I'm making
Mhm.
like a huge correlation for alcohol, but I'm like, caffeine? No. I'm like,
Not
coffee's
me.
fine,
Can't be.
but let's pick on alcohol. Yeah, exactly. But that is so interesting because, low GABA, it has a lot of correlation with ADHD symptoms and like you
Mhm.
said, anxiety. So,
Mm.
wow. Okay, so sorry to interrupt you. I just had like a
Yeah.
huge light bulb moment that I
Great.
had.
Epiphany, light bulbs, fireworks, all the things. And alcohol, I think this is one that we kind of can tune into pretty easily. Like if you have too much to drink the next day, you notice the signs of it, right? Like you can really feel that. And part of that sort of anxiety that comes the next day is low GABA. So even let's say like someone doesn't want to reduce drinking at this point, you could take a GABA supplement to kind of offset some of that. And that's often what I do. If I'm going to choose to have a couple drinks, then I'm going to have my GABA ready and I'm going to have that to buffer some of those side effects of the next day, thinking like, what did I do? Did I say something? Something wrong? Like, and that just that feeling of anxiety can come up. So that could be something, just a little bit of like harm reduction, we could call it.
I like that.
So the next one, processed sugar. So this is like your high fructose corn syrup, your white sugar, your brown sugar, the things you find in like candies, cookies, cakes, a lot of like processed and packaged goods. And what's going on there is processed sugar uses your body's resources to process and digest it, but it's not giving you anything. There's no nutrition that it's offering. And there is a relationship with gut bacteria. We know that people who have high sugar diets have fewer good gut bacteria and they have less variety of gut bacteria. And that's relevant because different bacteria do different things. Some are going to balance your blood sugar, which is also a key for anxiety. Some are going to make your immune system. Some are going to make your mood boosting neurotransmitters. So we want a variety in there. And processed sugar can really deplete that. And we have lots of alternatives, even the more natural based sweeteners like maple syrup, honey, agave. These are going to spike blood sugar a little bit, but they are going to offer some trace minerals in there, and they're going to be a little bit more nutrition than a processed sugar. Or we have kind of fun ones like monk fruit. We're seeing really big coming in now because it doesn't spike blood sugar at all. And it's been used for a long time in Asia, but we're started seeing it more in the West now.
Those things are all my friends for sure, as a sweet tooth is one of the things that I definitely have. And I'm so
Yeah.
glad that you brought up blood sugar because this was something that I wanted to ask you specifically about. I was reading that 25 to 30% of Americans have chronically high blood sugar, hyperinsulinemia.
Mhm.
And then I thought, wait a minute, what was the stat that I just looked up about the percentage of Americans who have anxiety? 31%. Almost the exact same percentage of the Americans who are experiencing chronically high blood sugar. So at its core, could anxiety, chronic anxiety, be a condition of chronically high blood sugar levels?
It's possible. They're certainly related in that when our blood sugar is high and then it's going to end up taking a dip and we kind of end up on this like blood sugar roller coaster, we will feel anxious as a result of that. And when our blood sugar dips down, so what happens is like when our blood sugar is high, insulin comes to the party and tries to, okay, this is super dangerous to have this really high glucose in the blood. Let's try to get it out. And then the blood sugar will dip down quite low. Adrenaline has to get involved to come kick it back up. And adrenaline is anxiety, basically.
Oh, right.
It's related for sure. I wouldn't say that it's like the sole cause. I think there's a lot more going on with like neurotransmitters and things, but a side effect of your blood sugar being dysregulated is feeling anxious.
That's so interesting. I never really made the connection between adrenaline and anxiety. Okay, so for the person again who's on that journey of like, Meredith, Heather, I am just trying to make a connection between my brain and my body so that I can make worthwhile next steps because wellness burnout is definitely a thing, right? Where people go all in and they're doing all the things that they heard about, and then a week and a half pass by and they're back in the Oreos. It's just downhill.
Mhm.
So almost everyone has a Fitbit or some other kind of wearable. A lot of people now are using continuous glucose monitors, CGMs, those little things on your arm that track your blood sugar levels. Would there be any specific points of data on either of those things that would be helpful clues as to the connection between what we're eating and the anxiety we might be feeling?
So, I mean, if someone was wearing like a glucose monitor, for sure you could look at the foods you're eating and see the spikes and falls in blood sugar. I think that's relevant. I think I have maybe a different perspective on wearables that I think they can take away our personal power because with anxiety, there can come a lot of very intensely focused behavior, obsessive kind of behavior. And so I think that having a wearable can mean like you're looking at it all the time. And then if you're seeing some sort of reaction, let's say you see like your heart rate going up, for example, that can then start to cause more anxiety because it's like, oh my gosh, my heart rate's going up. Something's wrong. What's going on? My body's not working for me. And then we go to Dr. Google and like all of these, this like cascade of events, we can monitor sleep. That could be helpful, but it can also not be helpful if you're looking at it all the time and then you start to get stressed about your sleep. And oh my gosh, I have to get high quality sleep or I'm not going to function the next day and I'm not going to be able to live my life. And then it just becomes too much. So I think in some aspects, going like super high tech with all of that stuff isn't that helpful because I think it can take you out of tune to just your natural body signals. Like your body at its core knows how to eat, it knows how to nourish itself, it knows how to fuel itself. Like this is what I hope we can get back to is these more intuitive signals because your body has so much wisdom around how to fuel itself. Like you have this in your DNA. So if we can get back to that, then I think that gives each person a lot of power for themselves.
Since so many of our foods are lacking the nutritional value that ancestrally we would have had easy access to, are there supplements everyone should be taking in order to optimize not just their mental health, but their health in general?
Yeah, it's a good point that a lot of the nutrients are depleting from our soil. And so our food supply has a lot of different composition of nutrients and differing amounts than previously. So I think there's a time and a place for supplementation. Someone could consider like a high quality multivitamin to kind of cover the bases. I generally prefer more targeted supplementation depending on like what's going on for someone. So some of the key ones I'll work with in the area of anxiety at least are a probiotic to balance out the gut bacteria, typically a magnesium, because we know a lot of people, like upwards of like 50% of people, are deficient in magnesium. So that can be a good one. Of course, we want to make sure they're absorbing it, but it's great to supplement in general. And then usually an adaptogen as well. So adaptogens, I've said this word before, these are classifications of plants, of mushrooms, of herbs that help the body with resilience to stress. So one of my favorite ones that I work with is ashwagandha. Have you heard of ashwagandha before?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So it's a great one. It does have evidence behind it that it can be helpful for insomnia and also anxiety. It's been shown to reduce cortisol. And this is something that you kind of need a little bit of time to see an effect with. It's not typically like you take an adaptogen and immediately the next day you're like, I feel amazing.
Not that kind of mushroom.
Effect.
That's a different kind of mushroom.
Different kind of mushroom. Separate podcast. You do have an episode on that, don't you?
I have quite a few. Yes. Yeah. Actually, since we're on this rabbit trail, let's put a bookmark in what you were saying because I don't want to derail us too far. But like the deep work of Am I Worthy and like all the stuff that you were saying is so beautiful, but it feels so out of reach for the average person. And more people I know are looking to those ancestral medicines, microdosing, especially because that's more accessible. Has that been a part of your journey at all?
I mean, I've certainly had clients, it's like out of my scope of practice, of course, but I've had clients that explore that and have seen great effect with it. Great effect in terms of their mood, their motivation, like just kind of balancing them out. And I think these medicines, they have a place. Yeah, I think they can be really powerful for our mood, definitely.
Yeah, I've definitely found that to be true. Okay, so back to ashwagandha, back to functional mushrooms.
Yes. So ashwagandha, this herb, that can be incredible for anxiety. We also see mushrooms like reishi mushroom, often called nature's Xanax. That one is really great for inflammation, for immunity, and for anxiety as well. Someone could also consider, we were talking about blood sugar, not as a supplement, but just as typically like an addition, like adding to your smoothies, because chaga is incredible for balancing blood sugar. It's a Peruvian, sort of in like the turnip family, but that can be a great one to add. So those are the main supplements, like a probiotic, magnesium, an adaptogen. You could also do like a B complex vitamin as well, but I typically like to see of like, where is someone at? How are they feeling? We don't want to overload people, right? Because when we get just so overwhelmed with things to do, it can all go out the window.
Well, it can cause more anxiety. That's the thing. That's why, that whole tuning in and deciding what's next, that's a practice that I've been playing with lately, is asking my body, like trying to have two-way communication with my body, which sounds so bizarre, but really asking, what do I need? And like just listening. And if an idea comes to my mind, okay, let's just go with it. Let's just see, within reason, of course. But about the mushrooms, the ashwagandha, the reishi, does extraction process matter? Does method of consumption matter? Like teas and supplements and gummies, there's all these different kinds. Is one better for someone who's really seriously needing to like bring down the anxiety?
Yeah, I typically recommend going with an extract because it is going to be more potent. And most of the research surrounding these comes from extracts. And you do want to go with something that's high quality. You want to have something that's third party tested so that you're not having something that's contaminated. Of course, like follow the bottle recommendations, but third party tested and an extract form is typically going to be the most effective.
So it sounds like that would be probably a tea or one of those coffee hybrid blends that you were talking about?
Usually, when I say extract, often you'll find it in supplement form, like a powder in a pill. That's typically how you would find like the most, I would say, like the high quality. But then you can also see benefits of having them in like an adaptogenic blend in a coffee or, a coffee alternative. You're just going to see a lot lower amounts of them. So if you're looking for like that therapeutic benefit of like, I really want to see some change in my mood, a supplement, in my opinion, is the best option. But it's not as if you're not going to get any benefit of having like a powdered formula in, that you mix into like a tea or coffee or something like that.
Right. Because I mean, the best, what do they say about exercise? The best exercise routine is the one that you do. So probably the same could be said about supplementation.
Yeah.
Fit it
And
into your routine. What's the general turnaround time for food and supplementation changes for seeing like an improvement with anxiety and mood?
so it depends. Let's start supplements. So it depends on the supplement. With adaptogens, we typically see like 4 to 6 weeks is what it would take for you to see like the layering in of the herbs, the mushrooms, whatever it is. With some supplements, it can be more immediate. Like I have clients after, 2 days of magnesium, they're like, oh my gosh, my sleep has improved so much. Like I've been struggling with insomnia for so long and I just had like a full night's sleep. So that can be more immediate. With food, what people will notice right away is when you start eating in a way that feels good for your body, you just start to feel good about yourself. Like that, and it doesn't even necessarily come from the nutrients, I would say. It's more like I'm making a really solid choice for myself, and that feels good to do. So there's like that kind of immediate mood boost. And then if we're following these mindful eating kind of principles that we talked about, right? So having it's like slowing down, eating our food, like those kind of things can have an immediate effect as well, because then we're absorbing nutrients, we're not feeling bloated. Like these kind of things can be more immediate. But for some nutrients, let's say like iron, for example, it takes a long time to build up iron stores in the body. So that might be something that takes a little bit longer to see an effect on.
Okay. So it's good to have those reasonable expectations. As far as mood boosting foods, what's on the menu?
So there's 4 categories of mood boosting foods that I think are the most impactful, coming from a nutritionist perspective, also of course coming from research of like these foods contain certain nutrients and some of them that we talked about. So we have nuts and seeds as our first category. Nuts and seeds contain magnesium and zinc, two of those minerals. They are also typically contain healthy fats that are going to stabilize blood sugar. And their seeds especially are like little nutrition powerhouses. Like it has to, if you think about it, like a seed is something that something else is going to grow from, right? So it has like all of this potential, all of these nutrients in one little package. So things like hemp seeds, incredible, one of the highest for magnesium and omega-3s as well. Pumpkin seeds, one of the best for zinc. And it's super easy to work in, right? Like a handful of seeds, sprinkling, maybe on a salad, or let's say you're having oatmeal or making a smoothie, and just like dumping a bunch of this stuff in is a great way to pack in nutrition. Number 2, leafy greens. So like kale, spinach, chard, any type of lettuce. These are going to provide folate, which is one of our B vitamins, great for mood. And they also typically, if you're getting like those hardier greens like kale, spinach, they're going to have fiber as well. And that's going to feed the bacteria in the gut. So we want to support them, keep them healthy. They also have chlorophyll in them, which gives them that green color, which is such a good antioxidant, great for inflammation. And then we have 2 more. So we have fermented foods. Fermented foods are things like yogurt, such a popular one. Perhaps we're going to explore some dairy-free yogurt since we talked about dairy, kefir, tempeh, fermented soy, kombucha, really popular one, sauerkraut, kimchi, any of these. These are going to provide live bacteria that are going to support the gut. And we've talked about how important gut health is for our mental health. And then the last one, bright fruits and veggies. So anything that has like a deep or rich color, think beets, cherries, berries, plums, sweet potato, carrots, any of these, that coloring tells us that they're really rich in antioxidants. And so that's going to help support the body with inflammation, help support the brain, and help us feel calm. So those are the 4 categories.
So for people that don't cook, which is a lot of people, they're listening to you and going, what am I doing with a beet and a sweet potato, Heather? And I fear that person is probably grabbing something on the way from home, like a lot of people do. They're busy, they're tired. So they're getting that processed food. I mean, is there like a in-betweener step between the beet and the sweet potato and the McDonald's?
We want to go with what people naturally enjoy, right? Like probably there are some foods that each person enjoys that do fall into these categories. So maybe carrots you can get behind because you can buy a bag of baby carrots and have them on the go and just like munch on them, right? We can certainly find things that are a lot easier to prep, but I also do think it does come down to those underlying beliefs, right? Because we spend time and money on what we value. So what are you telling yourself when you're not spending time nourishing yourself, right? You're choosing to put other things in front. And this might trigger some people, and that's fine. But I think we have to take personal responsibility for how we're fueling ourselves, right? Food is medicine. Food is fuel. It helps us get the energy to do the things that we want to do. So if you're feeling exhausted all the time and your schedule is like packed full, we got to kind of take a step back and be like, what's that about? Like, why are we feeling like we have to overschedule and, maybe like prove your worth, whatever it is? Like, why are we feeling like we can't take time for such a basic function like eating? Or a lot of times people will like not even have time to go to the bathroom in the day. And it's like, this is like your biology. Like, you need this. So what is it that is making you feel like you can't take time to take 2 minutes to go pee in the day? These are the deeper beliefs that we need to address.
Yeah, and that is really the tough work. So many people now, however, are working with a mental health therapist, which is great news, as long as it's the right fit and, the
Yeah.
right structure, because there are mental health centers that are just like a factory, and they sort of are incentivized to have you keep coming and just, talk about your day, and no real progress is made. But for someone that's listening to this, I would assume that they are really wanting that progress. And so let's say they're working with a therapist. What kind of things should they bring up? How can they loop in their therapist as a partner with them on this process?
Yeah, I think we want to get really aware of what our deeper beliefs are and how we might sabotage our progress. So, for example, one of my main sabotage strategies is procrastination. And I will go into that when I am about to do something big or put myself out there. And my subconscious goes like, whoa, this is really scary. So just procrastinate on it, delay. You
Well,
got other
quick,
things on your
laundry,
to-do
your
list.
laundry,
Yeah.
your closet.
All of a sudden, I remember 10 other things I have to do that are important. And it's like, no, they're not important at all. But this is why the subconscious can be so sneaky and really like, we have to understand what it's trying to do. It's not that it's trying to sabotage your life because it hates you and it wants you to be miserable. It's trying to keep you safe. And that means keeping you the same. And so if you have these underlying beliefs that you survived with up until this point, that's what it wants you to keep rolling with, because that's what feels safe. And so this is a conversation that people can have with a therapist is like, what are some of my underlying beliefs that I'm coming in with? And then what are some of the tools that I have to be able to disrupt those in the moment, right? So when I start to go into procrastination, when I start to go into, needing to be right or numbing out or any of these kind of distraction, what is a tool that I can lean on to pull myself out of that? Maybe it's some breath work. Maybe it's some affirmations. Maybe it's offering yourself safety so that your subconscious knows it's safe for you to change and do it, take a different path, that you don't have to keep doing the same loop over and over. Because I think what happens is we get so freaking frustrated with that loop and we're like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to follow this, but I don't yet have the alternative. I don't yet have the skills to do something different.
Oh my gosh. Okay, what is this, like the fifth light bulb? Like, as soon as you said your brain is trying to keep you safe, your body's trying to keep you safe,
Yeah.
and safe means the same, like mind blown, because I've never
Yeah.
thought of it that way. But you're so right. And when we don't see a solid road of this is the alternative to being the same, which includes these self-loathing behaviors, then we do stay the same because we always pick whatever we perceive, twisted as it may be, the lesser evil. And the lesser evil might be like, I'm gonna just, eat Oreos and feel anxious and drink alcohol, and yeah, because I don't see this other path. So thank you so much. You were like such the right person to come and share this with. I appreciate all the
Yeah.
knowledge and the light bulbs. Can you share how people can interact with you? You are just north of Toronto or in the Toronto area.
I'm
You
in
have a
Toronto. Yeah.
practice. Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
share how people can interact with you, either in person or virtual.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm in Toronto. Most of the practice that I have is virtual, and I run an app called Cultivating Calm. So if people want to dive deeper into their deeper beliefs that are holding them back and want to really make some shifts and understand what are the habits that they can put in place that are going to help them be calm, be happy, and live with more ease, then they can check out Cultivating Calm. There's a free version of the app they can download, get started. And I also do have coming up an in-person offering, which is an in-person retreat that's happening just north of Toronto. It's going to be this beautiful, like forested plank area. So it's yoga, it's restorative hot stone, it's meditation, it's workshops as well to dive deep into really having like a calm reset. And that's happening on Saturday, September 13th. So we can include the link in the show notes, and anyone who wants to explore coming for that day-long retreat, then they can join us for that.
I love that. That sounds perfect. And I'm sure after spending a summer with children and grandchildren, everyone will be
We
excited
need a
for a
reset.
day-long reset. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, thank you again. This was fantastic.
Thank you for having me.